Well, here we are for another episode of the Startup Junkies podcast. My name is Jeff Amrine, and today I'm joined by co-host Haley Allgood, Executive Director of the Startup Junkie Foundation.
Hello, everyone.
And we're lucky today to have two amazing entrepreneurs that are bringing amazing new cool things to the general store category with Freckled and Farmhouse. And we've got Natalie and Luke Freeman. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. We're excited.
So tell us about yourselves. Start with that. What led you to what you're doing today? Give us a little bit of background.
Luke, how about you go?
Sure. So Freckled Hen Farmhouse all began with Freckled Hen Farm. So Natalie and I got married in college, went to Mizzou in Columbia, Missouri, and early in our relationship we developed a dream to one day own a farm. My background is in sustainable agriculture. I have a master's in horticulture. And so when we moved to Fayetteville, a few years after we moved here, we were able to buy a 3-acre piece of property on the northwest side of town and start our dream farm called Freckled Hen Farm. And Natalie had been blogging and Instagramming up until that point. And you can relate to this. We moved into a fixer-upper piece of rural property, put a lot of work into that house, and there was just a lot of interest on Natalie's blog and Instagram about what we were doing with our farmhouse, what we were doing on our farm, how we were gardening and raising chickens, what we were using to decorate our home. And so we were inspired kind of through that interest to start our general store, Freckled Hen Farmhouse. So that's where the name comes from, and it's very much rooted in our little farm in Fayetteville.
So it means for real, authentic farmers with a background in agriculture and sustainable agriculture, and one thing kind of led to another.
Exactly, yes.
And Natalie, you have a background in marketing, or you are a
unofficially.
blogger, right? And so how long have you had your blog, and what got that started? Was it started with renovating the farmhouse, or was it even earlier?
I started the blog as a sophomore in college, so that was about 12. I've been blogging for about 12 years. And so it was an opportunity for me to be able to stay connected to my family that was out of state. So I really thought it would just be a blog that would be talking about, oh, this is me camping with my boyfriend. But it really did turn into a full-time income.
That could get into all kinds of bad.
Yeah, I mean, it was PG. but it was a very I think about bloggers now, how they're going into the field with a lot of expectations. And at that point, there was nothing like that. It was just kind of sharing my life, my first apartment, things like that. So if you go back to the archives, it's very funny. But I kept blogging even through the story of us getting married at 19 and 20, us moving to a community where we didn't know anyone, and us kind of building roots there, and then eventually moving onto the farm. So by the time I'd been blogging about the farm, I'd been blogging for about 6 years at that point.
Wow.
So we really did see it as an opportunity as people really started to get excited about the farm, that it was an opportunity to open up an online store where people could have a tangible piece of what I'd been blogging so much about at nataliecreates.com.
So at Natalie, and you've got a substantial number of followers, right? How many people follow you today?
Yeah, on my personal account, it's a little over 50,000, and then on Freckled Hen, they've really connected to that story there, and so we're at about 40. But I just absolutely love being able to connect with people on social media. So it's really been an organic growth. It hasn't been one of a lot of strategy. It's just been a lot about sharing my story and what we do and what we're passionate about.
It's not contrived at all. Completely authentic. This is what's on your mind or what you're doing at a given moment.
Right, and I do make an income in that space, but it truly has evolved over time.
Well, that's exciting. Congratulations on the growth of that.
Yeah.
So you've gone through this transition of you've got the farm and you've got the farmhouse. How did you, and I looked at the site, you have a variety of really interesting things. How do you curate and decide what you're going to carry?
Yeah, so it first started out, like we said, as products that we carried in our own home that people were really curious about. And so over time, we've really listened to the customer, what they want, and we've also identified competitors and what they offer and what we can offer that's different. So we always try to provide a wide range of prices. So if anyone comes in, they feel like they could find a thoughtful gift for that person in their life, no matter, you know, how much they can afford or not. And then also we always want our products to be useful. So we don't want a bunch of sit-arounds in the store. We want things that people can actually use, like lighting a candle, or right now our customers are really passionate about us reducing waste and investing in reusable products. So we have a lot of like reusable straws, glass jars, plastic bags that can be reused over and over again for a sandwich you might take for lunch. And so it's really about listening to our customer, but always staying true to our principles of, is it something that I would want to keep in my home, and is it something that would be a thoughtful gift for another person?
I love that. Having something useful. The first time I went in your store, I noticed that, and I think that was even before you had expressed that to me. And it was different. It's not just a bunch of knickknacks that are going to sit on a shelf, or something that looks pretty that I'm going to throw away half the wrapping of it. They really are unique gifts that I can use in some way. So I like that a lot.
Yeah,
But
we're
I think-
really proud of what we offer for sure.
And part of the DNA of our store is really marrying kind of utilitarianism with beauty, you know, beautiful practical things for the home. I think that's kind of what Natalie and I are in our relationship. I'm more of the practical, analytical. Natalie's more of the creative. And I think we just marry those skill sets in, creating the store. It was very much bringing those two sensibilities together. And it's interesting how the store has evolved over time. When we started, it was very much garden supplies, farm supplies, home goods, and we still very much keep, gardening as part of our identity, but it's really grown into something that's more of a gift store, one-stop shop for people buying meaningful gifts for people they love, and also a place, I think, for people to find items that inspire them to live a well-lived, meaningful life. I think we've really kind of grown beyond the bounds of how we first envisioned the store, which was more farm supplies and home goods. And just the identity of the store has really grown. Like Natalie was saying, really gauging the needs and interests of our customers.
Do you focus on made in America, or artisan made, or small batch, or any of that type of stuff? Or is it just stuff that's really appealing to you regardless of where it comes from?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to have this conversation, because I think about who may be listening to this podcast, and one of the
70
things.
countries.
Yes, 70 countries. Get excited. But
Hello, Armenia.
One of the things that I really like to talk about is the reality of, where are we making money in the products that we buy? So some of the products may be made in China. They're a really beautiful product, but they offer us an opportunity to be able to sell smaller Made in America brands. And so we don't ever narrow it down to just made in the US, because oftentimes that can be inaccessible for someone.
Sure.
But also it kind of limits what you can offer. So we have enamelware, for example, that used to be only made in the US. They don't have enamelware manufacturers anymore in the US. So we had to look outside. And so that's one of our number one categories that we're buying for, is that product. And so we had to be able to expand. So we can't limit ourselves necessarily to made in the US, though we always are trying to be intentional about what's the story behind this,
Right.
or can someone purchase it and know it's going to last a lifetime, even if it did come from China.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. As you see the store and the offerings evolve and what you're doing on the farm, so you've got to this point where it's successful and you're well known and you've got a good following. It's a credible brand. What comes next? What's the next 5 years look like?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've really been intentional about in 2019 is not necessarily moving towards the next thing, but doing what we do better. So we've really been working hard about putting systems in place. We've been working hard at learning how to lead well. So we've been hiring quite a few employees. We're up to 8 now, which is big for us.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's great.
And a lot of those members work 4 to 5 days a week. And so they're with us. they really care about the brand, and for us to be able to lead them well means that we can be more successful. So it hasn't necessarily been our focus to maybe expand in locations, but really kind of hone into what we do best and do that better. So that's really what we've been focusing on this year. But it's interesting, I just went to a personal development conference. I just got back, and I think that goes in line with, you know, doing the work internally so that externally we can see results. But one of the things that I really was able to visualize is this idea of being able to help other small women in small business. So, you know, starting out opening Freckled Hen at such a young age, we didn't have anything in savings. I mean, if I'm being very honest.
Sure.
And so, but we did have this dream for this brand. And so, you know, we started small and we've slowly been able to build up the equity of the brand. But the reality is that if we wouldn't have been able to connect with some of the people that we connected with, we would have never been able to start, because a bank would not have ever lended us the money.
Right.
So I feel like maybe my end goal is not necessarily a retail store, but it's always been building community. And one of the ways I would really love to do that is to be able to start a nonprofit down the road that really supports women in small business and, you know, creates these microloans for them so that they can really live out, you know, what they feel like they need to be doing.
So down the road, you want to be even more catalytic in other people that have a dream but maybe didn't have the means, and providing those microloans, that little bit of money that it takes to sometimes get a good concept started.
Yeah, and I always wonder, why do I continue the brand of Natalie Creates? But I think it's really about women realizing what kind of beauty they can create in the world, and then going out and doing that with confidence. And I really feel like one of those tangible pieces is money. And so being able to provide that for women, or, you know, people groups of, you know, minorities, would be such an empowering way for us to give back, while also creating a space where people can come and feel included at our store physically.
Sure.
Natalie, I have a way for you to do that.
Okay, tell me now.
So,
4 or 5 years?
So we're working on actually bringing Kiva to be more active in Northwest Arkansas.
I love Kiva.
And so with that does allow zero interest loans of up to $10,000. And a way to do that is actually we're looking at having a Kiva hub that's really increasing that activity in Northwest Arkansas, providing service, and then trustees who will endorse the borrowers, and then maybe also hosting some networking events, some potluck dinners where borrowers and potential lenders can get together, and providing those microloans. So
That would be
love
really
to
cool.
talk
Yeah,
to you
that'd be
about
great.
that.
That would be really cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So look for that coming possibly in the next year, not 5 years maybe, where we can endorse a few individuals and help them get their dreams started too.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
So let me ask you, with starting a business, you said you didn't have a lot of savings, and a lot of times people think that it is really challenging to get a business going. With what type of financing did you have? How did you get the business started? I think our listeners might be interested in that, if you're willing to speak a little bit on it.
Sure. Well, it started with developing a business plan and going to the small business and technology development center at the Walton College.
I feel like there are resources at every university that you can take advantage of that are free.
Yeah, the SBDCs are everywhere.
Yeah,
but that would have
exactly.
been Bill Fox.
It was Bill Fox and Martha.
And Martha.
Again. Yes. Yes.
Who's
And
now on our team
who's
here,
now
so
on our
we're
team.
right,
really
exactly.
excited.
Right.
She's awesome.
She is great. So Bill and Martha reviewed our business plan. And I mean, before that, Natalie and I took a retreat to Eureka Springs. We rented a cabin for a weekend and sat down and hammered out the business plan. We were disconnected, no Wi-Fi. It was just us, pencil and paper, just writing out this inspiration, this idea that had come to us. But Bill and Martha connected us with Forge in Huntsville.
Oh, fantastic.
So we were able to get a small business loan through Forge. It was a $30,000 loan, and it was that. And then borrowed a little bit of money from family, but that's what got Freckled Hen started. Now, I will say, this is such a good time to start a small business, because we're able to start more or less from our office and then a small 100 square foot studio space in South Fayetteville. I mean, we were paying, I don't know, $200
Maybe something
a month for rent. out of this studio space. We wanted to start online because that's where we had customers.
Right.
And
So-
it's also lower overhead.
And lower overhead. You know, we didn't have to pay for a fancy storefront. We used the loan to buy inventory, to build out a website. We use Shopify as our online platform. And so for, you know, very little input, we were able to get off the ground running. And, you know, we didn't have much capital, but we did have this customer base. You know, and that was
Right.
really our competitive advantage.
You had built that following in advance of that, right? I mean, you had some of the
Yeah.
following that was gonna be your target audience.
Right, whenever we launched the website, at that point we had maybe 6,000 followers that were following Freckled Hen.
Uh-huh.
And I strategically did that through some of my friends that were also influencers in the online community, being able to tell them about the store and them telling
Mhm.
their followers. Yeah, and then, I mean, when we launched, we sold out pretty much the first day. It was, you know, fantastic. So Luke's right, we didn't have a ton of capital, but we had customers who were willing to spend money.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So what, obviously Freckled Hen Farmhouse has a great new location on College in Fayetteville. What made you invest more in the physical location as you grew rather than trying to build solely online?
I think like you can see the physical store, and there is a lot of time there and a lot of you know, investment in that space. But I mean, we are always working on our online store. It's just down in the basement and it's not as pretty. You know, so we have a photographer and graphic designer on staff, and she does a lot of like website maintenance, and then we have, you know, a person who's constantly adding new arrivals. So we are always working on our online store. But for us, from the get-go, our customers, when Luke was talking about the small space, we actually ended up converting that into pop-up shops, because people, even with us having an online store, they always said they wish they could come in and physically like touch the products, be able to meet us and see us and talk to us about what we love about the product. So from the beginning, listening to our customers, that's what they've told us. And so over time, we've just noticed that our customer really does appreciate being able to be a part of the Freckled Hen community, walk into the store, have us greet them, wrap their gift for them. And in a world of Amazon and people trying to build an online platform, we've realized that we can maybe go the opposite way, and it would have impact that's more appropriate to Freckled Hen. So a lot of people always say like, wow, you've really grown, like that other store, that was kind of crazy, right? And I'm like, absolutely, like it was definitely a stepping stone for us. You know, when you walked in, the floors would kind of shake and product might fall off the shelves. But the reality is that definitely helped us to get to where we are now.
Well, and there was a reality to starting at that point, and
Right.
it being consistent with the story of you bootstrapped this thing together, and
Yeah.
you started with the farm, and so I think that adds credibility to the story, really, having to go through that.
Yeah, and I think that what would be more terrifying for me is if we had gotten a huge loan and we didn't have any proof that it was going to be successful. So just knowing that we're only going to grow as our customer requests, I just think it's a better business decision for us.
Yes, and we ended up growing a lot faster than we expected. In our business plan, we said in 5 years we'll be in a brick and mortar.
And that never happens, by the way.
That never happens.
You're a statistical outlier, so good for you.
I mean, but
Congratulations.
we did grow small. We got a really great piece of advice early on, which was to not grow until you can't help but grow. Essentially, to hold back until you're bursting at the seams.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And wait until then to move
Sure.
into a bigger space, which is essentially what we did, because we started with a 100 square foot studio space in 2016, moved into like a 400 square foot space in 2017, which Natalie was talking about, where, you know, the floors would shake and product would fall off the shelves. Then to where we are now, 800 square feet with basement for inventory, moved there in 2018, March of 2018, and we've been there since. So, you know, Natalie's saying we're really working on kind of growing smart where we are.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time we've spent more than a year in one location.
Wow.
So we're really developing capacity, growing roots. It's kind of like, I mean, my background's in horticulture, so I think in terms of plants, but there's not as much above ground right now, but we're really growing a lot of roots, extensive root system, so that, we'll be ready to send up some new shoots. But it's really a matter of growing capacity, empowering employees, delegating responsibilities. That's where we're at right now.
I think that's great. And so one of the things that I do want to bring up is you all were a participant in our Scale Up Ozarks program too.
It changed my life. It was fantastic.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I didn't ask that before we hopped on the show.
That wasn't a paid
But thank I was hoping that it wouldn't go the other way.
That made our day.
My question was going to be around that. Sometimes programs like that, so that are major time investments for an entrepreneur, and trying to decide where you invest your time. You have limited resources as a growing startup company, and I think sometimes the founder's time is one of the most valuable resources that you have. And so that was a business growth program, some educational speakers coming in, and a cohort where you got together and talked to other entrepreneurs. What are your thoughts on why participate in programs like that, and what do you have thoughts on where entrepreneurs should be investing their time as they're growing a business?
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, honestly, this can sound cliche and a lot of people can say it, but being at the top can be kind of lonely because you're making some hard decisions and sometimes you're not your employee's best friend. And being able to have colleagues or a cohort to be able to bounce ideas off of or to be able to make better decisions is always, I think, just a great thing, not just for you, but for your business in general. And so, participating in Scale Up was so great because whenever I started, I really led out of fear. And then once I graduated from the program, I led out of confidence. And that was just a huge thing for our business because I was no longer afraid to make the next step because I was educated on the step that I should make. And so I really feel like it's so important to always be reading books, listening to podcasts, really identifying how you learn best and being able to put those things in action. I'm always listening to a podcast on business. I am always thinking about how Freckled Hen can do better, make a bigger impact, and I'm always connecting with other people about it. So I'm taking a business class right now. It's with the Hollis Company, and Rachel Hollis is leading it. And it's a 2-hour business class every month, and it's online. I think it's maybe $40 a month or something like that, and then you have homework assignments. It's just a really great way to be able to constantly be revisiting these ideas you're thinking about. And then also having a mastermind group with local businesses in my community. I'm in a mastermind with Lindsay of Kindness and Joy Toys, Trista of Wit and Whimsy, and Kelly of Crown. And just being able to really surround myself with those business women has truly impacted our brand because we're connecting with other businesses, which is so important, but we're also learning about our businesses through the success and learning lessons of theirs. And it's just great because when you have businesses in your community, you kind of start to better understand the heartbeat of the community through your local shoppers. So really just finding other entrepreneurs that are doing the same thing as you is so important. And then constantly, learning about new ideas is always helpful.
That's great. Continuous learning, having multiple books open. It's that there's something to that 10,000 hour rule that they talk about. And I think we're just about getting near the end of our time here. Where can our listeners and viewers find out more about what you guys are up to?
You can find us on Facebook at freckledhenfarmhouse.com. You can shop with us online, Facebook at Freckled Hen Farmhouse, and then online at freckledhenfarmhouse.com. You can also find us on Instagram at the Freckled Hen Farmhouse. You can follow me on Instagram at Natalie Creates, and
I'm on Instagram at Luke Freeperson.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having us.
Your story is it's a fantastic journey. We're glad you were on.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.